7th December 2021. Aksir with a Q. My 31-year-old, highly accomplished, self-driven, insanely talented millennial daughter called it a wrap on earth and declared, I'm all done here. She was 2 months short of her 32nd birthday. Her father and I had gone to the Roshni Counseling Clinic, Hyderabad, 3.8 kilometers from our home, to keep our appointment with a psychologist at 12:30 noon that day, when my phone pinged. It was our domestic. Didi has been in the washroom too long. It has barely been 7 months. Aksir's last conversation was with me on the terrace of our home that she called beautiful. Ironically, it was one-sided. I spoke and she listened. I made a statement. Aksir, even someone with depression is responsible for getting well. There was a pause. Then she got up with a resolve, picked up the 2 mugs of chai we had emptied and walked down the steps into her room to take charge. That was it. Ironic, because Aksir's professional life as a law graduate and a therapist had all been about one thing: shut up and listen. All Aksir's startup merchandises carried this message. She advocated listening skills for wellness. Shut up and listen. It came from her belief that radical differences in generational preferences, prejudices, and priorities were becoming tangible issues today. She and I often spoke of how generational diversity could be a help and a headache, depending on whether or not we listen to each other. I do believe that Aksir's case is representative of the fragile, volatile ecosphere that our educated, urban, upper middle class young grapple with today. They struggle to establish themselves in a traumatized global order. Aksir wanted a stake in life. We wanted a job for her. Aksir felt the safest on the highways, whereas we double-latched our front door. Aksir was advocating mental health, gigs, the identity spectrum, while we were worrying about what the neighbors are thinking of us. And we were getting advice. Keep Aksir's depression private. It may threaten her employability. Why have you been so liberal in your upbringing of a daughter? You shouldn't have bought her a car and a motorcycle. And you have done enough for her. This generation takes too much for granted. These voices did not ring right coming from a community of self-proclaimed progressive parents and bosses, lifelong learners, and young at heart citizens of the world. I wondered if we were speaking from assumptions, and whether we needed to take a step back and recalibrate our reference points, because the way the generations coexist today is not sustainable, and it is hurting our emotional, collective emotional and mental health. I'm not alone in this devil's advocacy. The World Health Organization says that youth suicide is an emerging and serious public health hazard in India. In 2019, the age groups 18 to 30 and 30 to 45 accounted for 67% of the total suicides. And the number keeps increasing. It does not fit. Generations are meant to be keepers of each other. Generations are the continuum of human survival, repositors of life's DNA. But for that, there has to be a fundamental generational benevolence. And that is not a given anymore. Our young are marching to unfamiliar tunes. Aksir had all the check boxes ticked: an Ivy League education, supportive parents, good looks, talent, no dearth of skills, coaches, teachers, gurus, and yet we kept hearing, "Ma, all I want is a mentor to hold my hand and show me how to feel and be enough." And that did not happen. What would you say went wrong? Genetic predisposition? Poor parenting? Confused values? Have you heard of Michael Lynn? He was earning 3.5 crores per annum, got free food daily, unlimited paid time off as a Netflix engineer. He quit his job out of boredom and is now fully committed to the idea of working for himself. Have you heard of Kshama Bindu, India's first woman to opt for sologamy? She sought legal sanctity for self-marriage. And then she married herself with all the rituals like any regular couple. Have you heard of Simon Sotelo, the perfectly alive, healthy graphic designer from the Portland? She was 27 when she donated her body to science. She represents the young generation's death positivity, with talk of planning their funerals and cremations years ahead. They also mentioned turning the dead into diamonds. On the 6th December, the day before she passed, Aksir was telling me how she has seen and done it all, and how life does not hold any more wonder for her. I asked if she had given any thought to what her exit would do to me. And she said, "Ma, you're welcome to come along." The times, they are strange, don't you think? Political, economic, environmental, technological, communication, earthquakes show no sign of abating. What was isn't anymore. The exposure that my generation valued is drowning the young in its waterfall of unfiltered information. In addition to her degrees in psychology and law, the resistance we were facing from our daughter to treatment came from her extensive reading online about the big pharma frauds. The internet's extra-constitutional influence does not factor socio-cultural coordinates. New age platforms, online gurus, peers, special friends, they all have greater access to and influence with our young than you and me as parents and bosses. No one knows what is shaping their minds. We've all bought into this popular script that they are smarter, and as long as they are happy, it's all good. But smartness is not retrospective wisdom, and happiness is ephemeral. It has to be earned every moment. But who's going to tell them that? My generation has lost the courage to risk unpopularity with our kids. We fear estrangement from them. We are wary of playing the parental card. And so, Aksir has gone. But what does it say about us? One, that we need an education in the empirical realities of the generation gap. Think the recently concluded Philippines election results. Among the many issues, there was a generational tussle between the dictator's apologists and the modern values of accountability, efficiency, integrity. Think corporate India's legacy trends. Many a Gen Next is breaking away from their family business to chart independent and often contrary paths. A science said recently, I do believe that things are changing so fast, I would like to understand it all with my own two eyes and not through the eyes of someone else, nor any predefined lens. And I'm happy to work 1,000,000 hours a day in order to have that freedom. The second thing, we need to understand causation versus correlation for better policies and programs in generational wellness. Think job burnout, which has now been categorized as a syndrome resulting from chronic workplace stress, which has not been managed successfully. And this definition is from WHO's International Classification of Diseases. Research says that workplace stressors, such as long hours, economic insecurity, work-family conflict, high job demands, low work control, can be as harmful to health as secondary smoking. Young aspirants today may have an expectation of an on-demand mental health support. The good news is that while the young may be more prone to behavioral health challenges, they're also open to talking psychological well-being and seeking assistance. Aksir founded her own mental health initiative called Aina Therapy. The don't tell, don't ask approach to mental health at their workplace has to change and become do ask, do tell, and then let's talk. The third thing we need to understand is that The real work involved is of a social and cultural change. It did not help my daughter's recovery to have the psychiatrist, the therapist, the parents, and the family all work in silos. Generational competence mandates support of the entire village in a spirit of benevolence and openness. Just as Aksir needed the middle ground to bring together medicine, psychology, spirituality, to address her horrific struggle, I young need all of us to come together and help them. The other thing that we have to remember is that even though we are warned against stereotyping, generational characteristics do exist. They could and they should inform approaches for better outcome. Take healthcare. While a boomer will probably put their trust completely in the doctor's authority, a millennial may surf information on the web, which may then lead to indecision and anxiety. While a boomer may be chasing weight loss, a millennial's concern may be to lessen the stress and get better sleep. What Aksir needed was a wellness program that went beyond diet and nutrition to include financial well-being and mental health. She needed tools and help that she could relate to. What she needed was a partner in health and not an expert or an authority figure. Have you been affected by generational gaps in attitudes, skills, and knowledge? Do you believe that it is time for institutions to refurbish their recruitment policies, their training programs, their communication protocols, their interpersonal skills, their awareness of each other's lives outside of the workplace, retention, succession planning? Acknowledging and addressing generational diversity is bound to improve employee outcomes and company performances. Let's begin with a basic training in generational quotient. This is a wake-up call for all. This is a time for kindness. This is a time for over-communication. Aksir needed psychological safety. She was crying for flexibility, for establishing boundaries, for creating new norms around connections. I made mistakes. I took things personally. I took time to get a generational education and then to absorb, embrace the differences. I should have shut up and listened more with greater empathy. I could have ennobled, not enabled, ennobled talk of behavioral health issues and how to overcome them. I should have better appreciated Aksir's looming loneliness. I could have made navigation of the system easier for her. Some questions will remain forever. Was it a simple case of genetic predisposition, getting triggered by life's stressful events, like the boy who talked commitment and then began ghosting her? Did Aksir receive the support a more evolved ecosystem could have given her? And what toll did generational grief take on her fight to be truly herself, independent of any approval? Aksir wanted to wear a Masaba Gupta designer sari for her marriage. My mother, her nani, bought and readied the sari despite my protests, and Aksir did wear it, along with the smartly tailored blouse, to the crematorium. Her sister made her up with bindi, lipstick, and Juhi Phule Mala, the gojra. Aksir lived, Aksir with a Q. Aksir lived and left on her own terms, but the generations, they need to come together to co-create, collaborative, cumulative, and compassionate terms. This onus is collective. This onus is collective. Aksir was a bleeding heart. There are many young social justice warriors like her. My clarion call today to all their friends, followers, fans, family, is to plant a bleeding heart in honor of their courage and to tell them, we care very deeply. These stakes, my friends, are sky high. There is only but to listen or die. Shut up and listen. Shut up and listen.